Death on Entertainment Tonight
at 10:30.
The still unfolding scene of earthquake devastation in Soviet Armenia. One of the worst quakes of the century, where tens of thousands may have died. The Gorbachevs cut short their mission in New York and rush home.
Домой, в страну.
Urgent measures are being taken to help all those affected by this terrible tragedy, and I have to be there in this effort.
This is the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather reporting. Good evening. The disaster struck a part of the Soviet Union that for centuries has been a virtual earthquake alley. Departing New York today, Mikhail Gorbachev spoke of great loss of life. One toll being reported, not confirmed, reported, is 70,000. Let's take a look at the vast area affected. Eastern Turkey and 3 southern Soviet republics. But worst hit by far is Armenia. The capital of Yerevan apparently escaped relatively unharmed. Yerevan, Armenia's 3rd largest city, population 170,000, reportedly 50% destroyed. Nearby, Linyakhan, 2nd largest city of Armenia, population 200,000, as much as 75% destroyed. Between these two cities was the village of Spitak. The 16,000 people of Spitak and all its buildings no longer exist. Correspondent Anthony Mason in Moscow begins our coverage.
The scale of the catastrophe is almost impossible to measure. Soviet television tonight said Spitak had been wiped from the face of the earth. Linyakhan, Armenia's 2nd largest city, is in ruins. No building more than 2 stories is said to have escaped damage. And Yerevan, with 200,000 people, felt the quake with almost the same force. Soviet and Armenian officials say the region is so completely devastated they can't even begin to count the casualties. But best estimates put them in the tens of thousands.
There is something like 80,000 dead, something similar to that figure injured, a large percentage of which are school children because it struck at midday.
This is probably the largest earthquake we've had in that area since we've had records to be able to compute magnitude.
945-75.
Soviet television tonight gave out telephone numbers to call for families willing to take in children. In Moscow, relief organizations began to gather clothing, and hospitals collected blood to send south to Armenia. On the streets, Soviets were glad to hear Gorbachev was coming home.
Soon after arriving in Moscow tomorrow, Gorbachev is expected to fly to Armenia to help heal the wounds. For our tiny homeland, said one Armenian tonight, this is more than an earthquake, it's a Holocaust. Anthony Mason, CBS News, Moscow.
There's debate today about the actual magnitude of the earthquake, but seismographs at the University of Washington measured it at 6.9. 8-point readings are not uncommon. But apparently what made today's quake so devastating is that it hit a heavily populated area where buildings are not earthquake-proof, are indeed merely mud huts with rock ceilings.
And of course, those are very weak construction, and they, when they fall down, the people are crushed underneath them.
Well, we could put it like this. Earthquakes don't kill people, buildings do.
Now here's a look at how this earthquake measures up historically. The Mexico City quake in 1985 killed about 9,000 people. Estimates in Armenia now put the number of dead at possibly 50 to 80,000 people. Only 4 earthquakes in this century have killed more than 50,000 people. The most famous of those 4 quakes was the 1923 earthquake in Tokyo, when 143,000 people died. The earthquake sent waves of grief through Armenian communities in this country, and there are a lot of them. Some 800,000 people here claim Armenian descent, and for many of them, correspondent Jerry Bowen reports, word of what happened was hard to come by and hard to bear.
America's tight-knit Armenian community is living with frustration and fear tonight. In Miami, Akabi Vardabadian mourns for 12 lost relatives.
They're all gone. I'm sure of that. When I saw on TV the tall building was going down, and that's where they lived.
In New York, church leaders said today there was little good news.
Children in the rubbles of demolished buildings.
Yes, overseas operator, please. Soviet Union.
And in Los Angeles, the largest Armenian population outside the Soviet Union, few could complete their calls. Those who did couldn't believe what they heard.
They were just panicked. They wouldn't even make sense at times. They would just say, medicine, 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 and stop. That means urgent. And the word stop probably would say about 10 times, urgent, urgent, urgent. And we're just like they were screaming or hysterical at the other end.
Here, tons of medical supplies originally intended for victims of Armenian civil unrest are now earmarked for the quake victims. Airplanes are available. All that's needed is Soviet approval.
All I can say, when it rains, it pours.
Local restaurants were collecting donations today, relief funds that are being directed through the Red Cross. At Armenian church schools, the American and Armenian flags flew at half-staff.
I just feel like I want to cry, but that's not going to help.
At the main Armenian food market, the homeland was what people talked about today. Tigran Babikian, the butcher, talked about his phone call from home last night.
He said died 6 people. Too much died, I don't know.
6 people in your family?
My family, yeah.
Armenia had so much trouble, political and social trouble, and here on top of this horrible thing to happen, Mr. Gorbachev will face a terrible, terrible problem. I'm just very sorry for them.
And in Armenian churches across America tonight, there were prayers. Prayers from a people consumed by fear, frustration, and dread. Jerry Bowen, CBS News, Los Angeles.
A late-breaking and still unexplained story developing tonight over an area of Western Africa where rebels, backed by the Cubans and Soviets, have long been waging war with Morocco for control of the Western Sahara. 2 planes chartered by the United States government were hit today by ground-to-air missiles. The latest on this still developing story from Bill Planett at the White House. Bill?
Well, Dan, the 2 jet aircraft were DC-7s under contract to the United States Agency for International Development. They came under missile attack near the border between the nations of Morocco and Mauritania, according to the U.S. Embassy in the Moroccan capital, which is Rabat. That border is in an area where a guerrilla group known as the Polisario have waged war for a separate Western Saharan state against the government of Morocco for years. The planes were en route from Dakar, Senegal, to Agadir, Morocco, in a civilian aviation corridor. The U.S. Embassy in Rabat says that one of the planes did crash and that its 5 crew members are presumed dead, while the other was apparently able to land at a Moroccan airport. The U.S. Agency for International Development says that the 2 aircraft were part of an operation to spray massive swarms of desert locusts, in other words, a humanitarian operation. The White House spokesman says that the Moroccan government is cooperating in the investigation and that U.S. Embassy officials are on their way to debrief the survivors from the second plane. That's all we know at this time, Dan.
Thanks, Bill. Obviously, it may be a while before we know whose missile it was knocked down that U.S. plane. Still to come on tonight's CBS Evening News, Gorbachev departs New York, and an exclusive look at the communist regime inside Afghanistan that's about to be left behind.
Heartburn flaring up?
It never seems to stop.
How long have you been taking antacids?
Seems like forever.
Have you told the doctor?
Won't he just tell me to take these?
Not necessarily. Nowadays, doctors can diagnose and treat your heartburn and indigestion.
Now that's worth a visit to the doctor.
If you've been suffering from persistent heartburn, indigestion, or stomach pain, this could be a serious problem. Make an appointment to see your doctor now. Brought to you by Glaxo Pharmaceuticals.
If they could see me now, out on a fun ship cruise, eating fancy food and doing what I choose, I'd like my friends back home to get a good look at the first-rate carnival cruise that I took. All I can say is, wow, hey, look at where I am. What a fun ship, holy cow. They'd never believe it if my friends could.
So on your next vacation, take a 3, 4, or 7-day cruise on Carnival, the most popular cruise line in the world.
Tony, what are you eating now? Fruitful brand.
Yeah, it's peaches and raisins.
Hey, Tony, that looks good.
It is. It's fruitful brand. It's apples and dates.
You just said it was peaches and raisins.
Well, it was.
Don't lie to your father.
Well, now it's raisins, apples, and dates.
Didn't you just hear your mother?
Hey, it is apples and dates.
Give me the box, Rosa. I'll decide.
Only Fruitful brand has so many fruits, you get a different fruitful combination in every bite.
It's peaches, raisins, and dates.
So Kellogg's Fruitful brand. It's never the same bite twice.
Understandable fast out for Mikhail Gorbachev. He flew home to face the earthquake aftermath in Soviet Armenia, which has been a center of nationalist turmoil and challenge for Gorbachev. Soviet officials said it was the enormity of the quake disaster, not political rumblings, not Red Army resistance to Gorbachev's Soviet troop cut talk at the UN that sent the Gorbachevs back home. President Reagan offered U.S. condolences and assistance. Our chief Washington correspondent Bob Schieffer reports on the hasty New York goodbye.
It was a somber, almost eerie scene. New York's worried Armenian Archbishop and his assistants in their billowing hooded robes leaving the Soviet UN mission. It reflected the grim mood of the Soviet delegation as Gorbachev's motorcade pulled away for the airport. There had been speculation Gorbachev's visit was cut short for reasons that went beyond the disaster, that he had political problems back home. But Soviet officials said not so.
The real reason is the stated reason, national tragedy.
As the scope of the tragedy became known, that was also the U.S. assessment.
I find that totally understandable, and I see no reason to look any further.
The tragedy cast a pall over the Soviet trade show that Gorbachev was to attend, and the kids at Manhattan's PS6, where Raisa Gorbachev was supposed to visit, were very upset.
I'm so annoyed. It was a chance of a lifetime.
President-elect Bush spoke by phone to Gorbachev this morning and found him deeply moved.
He said children in kindergarten and boys and girls in schools and workers in the workplace, more lost their lives because of the time that it struck, he told me.
When Gorbachev reached Kennedy Airport, the strain of the long night could be seen in his face as he mentioned the call from Bush and another from President Reagan.
I would like to thank them, and I would like to thank the American people for those feelings and for their readiness to give assistance in this difficult hour.
Even though it had been cut short, he said his meeting with the American leaders had been positive.
We believe that it was characterized by a readiness to understand the positions of each other. And yesterday, when I was asked to describe in one word the essence and the main motive of that meeting, I said that that word was continuity.
Despite the horrendous disaster that caused it to be cut short, as Gorbachev headed home, all signs were that this meeting had been a good one, that Soviet-American relations are moving in directions that both sides say are beneficial. Bob Schieffer, CBS News, Kennedy Airport.
82-year-old U.S. Supreme Court Justice William Brennan is in Bethesda Naval Medical Center tonight. Diagnosis pneumonia. The court's brief official announcement said Justice Brennan is being treated with antibiotics and, quote, doctors expect him to respond very well. Justice Brennan is expected to miss the court's Monday session, the last session before the court begins a month-long recess.
Ask every American the meaning of success, and you won't hear the same answer twice. Whatever your idea of succeeding, Citicorp and Citibank can help. With Citibank MasterCard and Visa cards, Citicorp Savings, Diners Club, and Citicorp Mortgage. We also serve millions of customers in every major marketplace worldwide. Citicorp, because Americans want to succeed, not just survive.
They came across country by wagon and settled in Amana, Iowa. Whatever they needed, they made by hand. Made it the best it could be. That same fundamental is still practiced today in Amana, Iowa, the home of Amana Appliances, a Raytheon company. Whatever you make it the best it can be. Raytheon, where quality starts with fundamentals.
Where can you find a 46-inch screen TV with all this and more? A picture that's bright and clear with a cabinet this beautiful, all at this price. Just $54 a month. Now, only at Sears.
Her doctor said it's heartburn.
Heartburn and high blood pressure. Wants him to cut out salt.
For heartburn, take sodium-free Riopan Plus 2. It starts neutralizing acid in 10 seconds.
Feeling better, Dad?
Mm-hmm. Riopan Plus 2, sodium-free, works fast.
NATO foreign ministers tried to come back at Mikhail Gorbachev's troop and equipment-cutting offensive with a counter-proposal today, something to try to keep the stress cracks in NATO from widening and try to match Gorbachev's crowd-pleasing grab for Western European public opinion. A U.S. jet fighter crashed today in a residential neighborhood in West Germany didn't help NATO's image. Correspondent Bill McLaughlin reports on NATO, Gorbachev, and the battle for the future in Western Europe.
Today, the Western allies countered Mikhail Gorbachev's European arms cut declaration with a drastic proposal of their own. NATO foreign ministers meeting in Brussels said Gorbachev's decision was good, but not good enough.
Gorbachev announced an asymmetric measure, he himself, unilaterally. Well, this is not enough when there are 55,000 tanks, for instance, in the Warsaw Pact and 22,000 in the Atlantic Alliance.
Besides maintaining a huge edge in troops and tanks, the Gorbachev move leaves Moscow and its allies with more than double NATO's strength in artillery, helicopters, and combat aircraft. After conferring today with Secretary of State George Shultz, who gave America's allies a first-hand account of the talks with Gorbachev, NATO put a new set of cards on the table. The West is challenging Moscow to reduce the number of tanks in Europe almost in half, to a total of 40,000. No one country would be allowed to field more than 12,000. NATO also wants to negotiate big troop cuts in both East and West. The aim, say NATO leaders, is nothing less than the removal of the threat of war.
The main thing is, of course, to get defensive structures, not only here in the West, but also in the East, so that there is no capacity of surprise attack or large-scale offensive action.
Despite the real sense of optimism in NATO's ranks, leaders here caution that the road ahead will be paved with hard bargaining. Bill McLaughlin, CBS News, Brussels.
About that sudden tragedy today in West Germany, the U.S. Air Force warplane crashing in fog into a residential area of a town near Dusseldorf. The pilot and at least 5 people on the ground were killed, up to 50 hurt, and a dozen houses destroyed or damaged in the German community. The A-10 Thunderbolt was loaded with ammunition and other ordnance when it went down on a training flight. Exploding rounds of ammunition hampered efforts to find and rescue victims. The American Embassy confirms tonight that a U.S. Army transport helicopter crashed today in Honduras. All 5 crewmen said to be on board were killed.
Around here, breakfast time is like the playoffs. My goal is getting him to eat right. His game plan's a little different. So I give him Wheaties. It's full of good nutrition, not sugar. He's sweet enough.
Wheaties, 100% whole wheat, naturally low in sugar. That's champion nutrition for the whole family.
Victory.
It takes time to get your gal to see the light. It takes time. It isn't always love inside. From the first little glance till she's ready for romance. Remember, little man, it takes time. It takes time to make the coffee percolate. It takes time to get your gal to set the date. From the first moonlit walk till you get the baby talk.
The Elegance Collection from Citizen.
Yeah.
There's only one place you'll find all the Disney classic film characters and toys, like the authentic Disney World toy train, with engine, tender, trolley, remote control, and more. It's only $50, only at Sears.
Gas pain, bloating. Gas-X has the strongest, fastest relief ingredient. Painful gas is like beer bubbles. Add the leading antacid. Add Gas-X. Only Gas-X gets rid of the gas. The strongest, fastest reliever for gas pain and bloating. Gas-X.
Left in the lurch and wondering, with Mikhail Gorbachev hastening home, is Cuba, whose island economy is kept afloat by Soviet aid, where the Soviet military quietly plays a big role, and where there has been talk of a possible New Deal wanted by Gorbachev. One Western diplomat in Havana called the timing of today's Gorbachev cancellation dreadful for Fidel Castro, that it appears to downplay Cuba's importance. Correspondent Bruce Morton is in Havana to tell us what might have been.
The big, empty press room signals an event which won't happen now. But if he had come, what would he have seen and done? He would have seen Fidel Castro. It would have been their fourth meeting. A Castro who has already told his people perestroika won't work here.
Castro is not at all receptive to Gorbachev's new thinking. Castro does not really believe in perestroika.
Cuba today is more Soviet than the Soviet Union.
That's because, observers say, Castro tried some capitalistic economic experiments, but felt their success threatened his power. Today, he seems very popular, very much in charge. That's in spite of problems with housing, in spite of shortages. You see a lot of people standing in line in Cuban shops. On the other hand, no one goes hungry.
I do not know of any country in the communist world, apart from Albania, which I do not know, or North Korea, where you have such total absence of visible dissent.
That makes it hard for visitors to know what Cubans really think. The outspoken anti-Castro ones have left.
Talking about a president, that's a hard question.
Castro could have shown Gorbachev impressive schools and impressive clinics, things Cubans didn't have before he seized power. Gorbachev might have said, yes, but we give you $5 billion in aid every year. Why can't you pay your own way?
I think the Soviets would prefer not to continue to subsidize Cuba to the degree that they have done.
The Soviets will try to keep the aid bill to Cuba as low as possible, but they can't really pull out.
You can wonder about other questions. What would Gorbachev think of the rundown buildings, the antique American cars? Would Castro have taken him to the Tropicana nightclub?
Cuba and the Soviet Union are an odd couple in some ways. Cuba's Marxist economy doesn't break even, and it's no model for other third world countries anymore. Still, Cuban troops have represented Soviet interests in Angola and elsewhere, and nobody expects these two partners to break up or even argue very much. Bruce Morton, CBS News, Havana.
In this country, they call the winds Santa Ana, and those hot winds from the desert roared across Southern California, fanning fires that destroyed some 25 homes. The winds, which began yesterday, are expected to last through tomorrow. Authorities reported no serious injuries, but the Santa Ana, with gusts up to 80 miles an hour, toppled trucks on highways, cut power to more than 300,000 people, and forced the evacuation of 300 people from one community.
The new Remington Electroblade vibrating blade system has been an amazing success for those who prefer shaving with a blade. Electroblade's high-speed motor and vibrating twin blades glide so easily, you'll get the closest, smoothest, most comfortable blade shave you've ever imagined. If you don't, I'll give you your money back. Safe, immersible, and cordless. The new Remington Electroblade vibrating blade system. A blade shave like you've never imagined, or your money back.
Why do you care what I eat for breakfast?
Maybe we shouldn't discuss this while you're under the influence of sugar and preservatives.
And what should I be influenced by? Nuts and twigs?
Kellogg's Nutri-Grain cereal with no sugar added and no preservatives.
This is much better than I thought.
Yeah, kind of like me.
Dedicated to the ones we love.
Now find out for yourself why the better taste of Nutri-Grain nuggets makes it the best tasting nugget.
How fast does Dristan nasal spray start to work?
Faster than Dolly can pick up a $5 tip.
Dristan works fast to relieve nasal congestion, even sinus pressure. For relief,
faster than a frog on a hot rock.
Try Dristan nasal spray. It's faster than...
There's only one place you'll find a furniture sale this big. All bedding and bedrooms, all dining rooms, all living rooms, all carpeting. It's all 10 to 50% off. Now, only at Sears.
Afghanistan invasion resistance leaders today ridiculed Mikhail Gorbachev's UN ceasefire proposal as an effort to win politically what has been lost militarily. In Pakistan, an Afghan Air Force pilot defected today in his Soviet warplane. For one of his commanders who's staying put, life has become the art of make-believe. CBS News camera crews inside Afghanistan have been with that commander, and that helps us tonight conclude our exclusive series, Afghanistan, the Soviet failure.
You are looking at a marked man.
Afghan government Colonel Abdul Hamid is the wing commander the Soviets left behind in charge of Kandahar.
When the Russian troops were here in Kandahar, they were living in this place. They have gone from Kandahar back to their country.
The Soviets abandoned Kandahar last summer during the first half of their pullback, turning the war over to men like Colonel Hamid. But all around Kandahar, the former Soviet strongholds are being overrun.
Russian gun. Brand new.
The Soviets are desperately seeking a deal with the rebels that will salvage some peace with honor, some shred of Soviet influence. But apparently the Soviets are leaving no matter what. Kandahar has been under rebel pressure throughout the 9-year war. It is worse today. Colonel Hamid must maintain the fiction that all is well in Kandahar and that the Soviets are not the aggressors.
This airport was built by Americans and now it's being destroyed by American rockets. These rockets were given to the opposition groups, especially to the extremist groups. I would like to request the peace-loving people of the United States of America to force their government, to force their leaders to stop the arms race.
The rebel side is closing in. This rocket hit a fuel tanker. The road is unsafe. Kandahar, Afghanistan's ancient capital, now a bombed-out ghost town, is under siege. An Afghan government patrol tells an empty street it is God's will that the people defend the city against the rebels. Mikhail Gorbachev said yesterday it is time to heal the wounds in Afghanistan. But for the rebels, there will be no forgiveness. Over 1 million Afghans have been killed. There will be no healing. There will only be scores to settle.
Everything was normal.
Colonel Hamid has flown over 2,000 missions in his MiG-21. If he doesn't leave the country with the last Soviet pullout, no one doubts he's a dead man.
Rocket came here. Fortunately, no one was there inside this class. Otherwise, I'm sure no one would have survived from this.
The Soviets have admitted defeat. They will go home. But Colonel Hamid continues to keep the Afghan families in Kandahar as if somehow they will prevail.
The children are getting injured. They have to go to Kabul for special treatment. The rest of the families are here. They're living here. They're working here. They're going to school their children. Everything is normal.
Most parents, in fact, have already sent their children to Kabul for safety. On the tarmac at Kandahar, the military governor's plane is on standby 24 hours a day. It's a 2-hour flight north to the Soviet border. With the fighting now only a mile from the airport, Colonel Hamid meets his pilots. Heroic Regiment 319 is ready for your orders, they tell him. How are you, he asks, in a routine they perform each morning. Alive, alive, they answer. Alive. And that's tonight's CBS Evening News. Dan Rather. Now, we'll be back at 8 Eastern Time with what may be President Reagan's last formal news conference. And as part of our assignment Gorbachev, we'll have a special live edition of the program 48 Hours immediately following the President's news conference. So we hope you'll stay tuned to this station, and we'll see you again soon.
Assignment Gorbachev, an historic visit and the people it touches. A special edition of 48 Hours as CBS News coverage continues tonight.
This is CBS.